82 arrests and counting at the southern border. A newly declared military zone in New Mexico is now giving up U.S. military troops temporary authority to detain migrants.
So almost immediately after a base was built on the border, people trying to cross through it started getting arrested because it was deliberately built in an area where border crossings were once at levels nobody'd ever seen before. However, many of those coming over now have zero idea they're trespassing on an active U.S. military installation, which carries some serious consequences.
And the move is already leading to arrests and controversy. U.S. troops stationed at the zone have limited authority to detain anyone who enters it illegally. That includes migrants. Some say the policy is about safety and security, while others say it threatens civil rights for citizens and non-citizens alike.
We were at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, when the Army delivered more than 50 armored Stryker fighting vehicles. They are a centerpiece of President Trump's plan to seal the southern border.
The area is traditionally known as a route for asylum seekers and migrants who illegally cross into the U.S. Crossing into military zones, however, carries more serious consequences than a typical illegal border crossing charge. The Trump administration hopes this will convince migrants to stop unlawfully crossing the border.
Just the sight of the Strykers has turned out to be intimidating for some people. Soldiers told me that they have watched people approach the border wall, see the Strykers perched up there above it, and then turn around and go back in the other direction.
So the first border base is working out so well, a second one's being set up. But what nobody's talking about is this is what happens when you live in a country where judges and lawmakers would rather stick up for criminals and keep them in America than allow them to be deported. And instead of teaming up with the president to remove the wrong people from our country, you've got sympathizers at all levels of government ignoring basic facts like a person's gang affiliation or the fact that they were caught trafficking people across America in an attempt to keep those in the country who've already been ordered to leave here permanently. And what that means is while the president is trying to rid our country of the criminals that are already inside of it, he's being blocked at every single turn, which is why he's got to do something at the border to make sure nobody else comes through. If the activists in America keep up their resistance movement, those who've embedded themselves in our country, running criminal operations that do not make it a better place at all, will just continue making untold sums of money off the backs of the law-abiding who do not benefit one bit from illegal immigration. And that brings us to the real reason why the militarization of the U.S. border has to speed up. It cannot slow down. Because if someone who's not supposed to be here sneaks in, they might be able to stay permanently. Especially if after they're arrested, the mainstream media picks up their case and starts twisting it around, telling everyone that good, well-meaning people who are actually the enemies of our country are being arrested for no good reason. And as word of this gets out, criminals in our country are figuring out that if their story gets televised, they might get their freedom back and be allowed to stay in America forever. Which is why they're now pulling stunts like this.
Those men are now stuck in limbo in a Texas detention facility. Yesterday, they put together this really remarkable signal to the outside world, spelling out SOS with their bodies in protest of their potential impending removal to a foreign gulag.
So in that video, you've got imprisoned gang members who are already in America illegally, and what are they doing? They're doing an SOS with their bodies for the news cameras, hoping that getting on TV will allow a mainstream network to stick up for them and twist their story around so that it sounds like they're family men and not gang members, taking their proclaimed innocence at face value while ignoring their true past, or the reasons why they were arrested to begin with. But, as you're about to see, none of the people being defended by the television as being innocent are in prison by accident.
Today we have aliens that have been ordered removed from the United States. They've been arrested through various components throughout the Tampa Bay region. They've been ordered removed by a judge or some other federal government entity. We're preparing to move them to the airport for staging across the southwest border for final removal to their home country. Within this group, there's one known and suspected Tren de Agua gang member.
So here we have a detention facility full of criminals. Some of them are gang members. None of these people were in the country legally, and they all wound up in this prison after being arrested. These are not innocent men. Yet our televisions have decided that the guys flashing gang signs at the camera are innocent, even if they were apprehended because they had outstanding warrants, a dangerous criminal history, or were placed on some sort of terror watch list. Oh no, the media wants you to believe that even if a judge or other government official determined that somebody's a danger to society, that's not true. In fact, not only are they not a danger to society, they're a police officer and they're out there helping to make the world a better place. That's not a joke.
Reuters actually managed to speak to one of those men, a 19-year-old named Jefferson Escalona. Escalona insists he is not a gang member. He says, in fact, he was a police officer in Venezuela, and that the Trump administration's evidence against him appears to be photos of him making hand gestures they found on his phone.
Okay, so everyone knows that there are massive parts of this story that are either being omitted or twisted or covered up to try and give the impression that innocent people are being taken off the streets. In fact, we know that some Tren de Aragua members were in former law enforcement positions in Venezuela and even former military positions there. But at a minimum, we know that this person was in the United States illegally. Now, if he's a police officer and if he's one of the good guys, how does he not understand how border security or law enforcement work? That's fascinating to me. Here we even have a White House press release letting us know that the Tren de Aragua gang has infiltrated Venezuela's government and its military and its law enforcement apparatus. This guy very well may have been a former police officer. But there are some out there who would rather have you think that these are all innocent men unjustly imprisoned for no reason other than that Trump's a criminal and he needs to go. But as you're about to see, that couldn't be further from the truth.
So how often do you do these operations where you bring people, you fly them out to a location to have them deported?
So right now, within the field office, we do it weekly. Specifically out of Tampa, this week is the first time we've done it. We've done, I think this is our fourth flight this week. But it's a routine business out of our larger offices. It's just kind of unique to, we're trying something new to see how effective we are this week.
What's new about it?
Just bringing in the airplane. Typically the aliens we would arrest in the Tampa office make their way to our long-term detention facilities down in Miami or up in Baker County, Florida.
So when activists see this happening, they don't see a bunch of gang members with criminal histories. No, they see a bunch of innocent men who are enemies of the Trump administration. That's what they see. They don't see the enemies of America at all, and that's the problem. And this is how the wrong people end up getting protected and covered for. That's how this propaganda campaign continues in the minds of many Americans, trying to convince them that something wrong is happening here, when the reason people are in jail being deported is because something wrong already happened. Like in the case of this gentleman, Abrego Garcia, who was busted for human smuggling and then released after the FBI said to let him go.
You got a bunch of people here, don't you?
It's 1%. Yes. Go back to work.
Gotcha. Where you working at?
Where?
Where?
You know what you got, right? You know what you got here, right?
No.
He's hauling these people for money, is what he's doing.
This is the guy who was famously sent to El Salvador, and the television's out there telling everybody that America made a mistake. But while they do this, these activists and these elected officials, they reveal that they care more about people who came to America and never should have been here than they actually do Americans, including their own voters who might even be part of their own party.
We're allowed to do what we need to do to protect the community. You know, and every alien that comes across our desk, we make a best effort to take them into custody and either, you know, execute the final order of removal or put them in front of the immigration judge for the final decision on their case.
To what extent were you not allowed to do that under the Biden administration?
There were a different set of priorities that were issued under the former Secretary of Homeland Security that whenever an alien is encountered and we don't do our job to put them into custody, then that puts the public at risk.
So here's the thing. Some of these criminals that were making America worse and were putting the general public at risk, they're going to get deported. Some of them may even be sent to places like El Salvador's mega prison. But if that happens, you better believe there are going to be people in America running it who want to go over there and try to rescue this person, to display their humanity and let us all see how great they are. But look at this. Here we have a photo of this senator meeting with a former MS-13 member who was sent to that El Salvador mega prison. And what's fascinating about this is it might be one of the only photos of him meeting with somebody who's incarcerated. There's an entire argument for over-incarceration and wrongful imprisonment here in America, but all the Americans that are in prison, oh, is he visiting any of them? No, he's not. He's visiting this guy. He's trying to get this guy out of jail and back to America when you've got Americans in jail who some say are in there wrongly. Now, I'm not bringing that up to try and say that the police are arresting the wrong people and that America's full of people who shouldn't be in prison at all, but you've got to understand, whether you love Trump or hate Trump, if you're an American and you're sent to prison and it really is for the wrong reasons, senators and news crews probably won't be coming to your defense.
Right now, we're turning the manifest over to the flight team, and they're verifying our manifest versus every alien that's in the transport vehicle.
So the reason they're doing that is to make sure that mistakes do not happen. And look, you have a whole bunch of people, you have everything being photographed and filmed. They're checking these people to make sure that they don't have any contraband. But what they're also doing is verifying that these individuals are the individuals who are supposed to be getting on this airplane. It's an organized process. It's hard for mistakes to be made in a process like this. It's hard for anybody to get on an airplane in America and have it be some sort of mistake. But even so, the media is full of this idea that the people being deported, it's happening wrongly, that they should be allowed to stay here, that these are great people, that, oh, all of these mistakes are being made. The judges are wrong, the police are wrong, the incarceration is wrong, they never should have been arrested, they don't have any criminal history. All of these arguments are put forth and combined with this idea that none of these people have had their due process, and this whole thing is just a sham, and an iron curtain has once again descended, not on Russia, but on America.
With all due respect, this is the United States of America. There are so many.
Where are you from?
I'm WSBA Channel 7. Okay. My name is Vanessa McLean.
Great, thanks.
United States of America. So many people are being robbed of due process. This is wonderful, this dog and pony show, but there's American citizens who are being deported. They show their birth certificates, they show their passports, they show their IDs, and a lot of the work being done is a little sloppy.
Well, first of all, I'll let ICE handle that accusation that you're making, that they're deporting American citizens who are showing birth certificates and all that. I don't believe that that's true, but I'll let them respond to that. But you seem to have no sympathy. You seem to have no sympathy for people that have been victimized by illegal aliens.
Isn't that crazy? We've got a reporter out here who goes to the governor of Florida and makes this claim that American citizens with birth certificates and passports are being swept off the street. That's crazy, but you've got to understand, people really believe this. They see the folks getting deported. They see people being caught trespassing a military base, and they think that none of this should be happening.
And we have to take action on it. I'll let them address your accusation. But the notion that somehow this is America, therefore we're supposed to have an open border, we're not supposed to enforce immigration laws, we're supposed to just sit on our hands when Biden let in 7 or 8 million people illegally into the country? No, that is not responsible. That is not what our citizens elected us to do.
An open border hasn't made America a better or safer place. None of the people who came across and snuck in illegally and then joined up with criminals or become criminals themselves have made our country better for anybody living here. This is why people who are gang members have to get deported, and if judges are going to block them from having to get deported and are going to fight for them to be released, the president's going to have no choice but to build bases all along the U.S. southern border to stop what he calls an invasion. But now, after ICE shoots down this ridiculous idea, the reporter chimes in and tries to switch things around once again.
149,000 new court cases in 2025 alone. Only 1% are new cases based on alleged criminal activity. So a lot of these people don't have criminal past or background. So who's being arrested, and where is this information on ICE's website? It's on court documents, but we can't get this information, and ICE, quite frankly, isn't being very transparent.
Look, I'll stand by the fact that if you're in this country illegally, you are a criminal. You will be deported. You will have the opportunity to be able to come back into this country through the correct immigration processes. We're working through those every single day, but our number one goal is to keep the American people safe from the...
Right, so that's the thing. This reporter, they come out and they say, oh, well, so many of these people, here they are, they're being arrested, they're being deported, but look, they don't have any prior criminal history. That must mean they're innocent, right? That's a tactic that always comes up. They say, well, since this person's never done anything wrong in the past, they can't possibly have done anything wrong this time. Look, I've got to tell you something. Even the worst criminals on this planet, at one point, they were little babies in their mother's arms, and they never had any criminal history, and oh, they looked so innocent. How could they possibly be a gang member today? That's a ridiculous tactic. And ICE is right. If somebody's in the country and they're not supposed to be here, that is a crime. That's a crime in any country. I don't care how big it is, how small it is. Borders are a thing everywhere. And if you break that law, yes, you've done something wrong. Yet there are people in this country who want you to think that if gang members with no U.S. criminal history get apprehended in here, that they're actually police officers and humanitarians and that they're just here trying to make America better, even though they somehow weren't able to make Venezuela better. Which is why many would say we need to have a base or multiple bases at the border. What do you think about that? Should militarization of the border have happened a long time ago? And will this stop the flow of illegal immigration and help make our country safer? Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.